Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
The year 1895 marked a pivotal juncture in the nascent field of psychoanalysis, a year dominated by the publication of Sigmund Freud's studies on hysteria. Co-authored with Josef Breuer, this work possessed transformative significance, laying the groundwork for a revolutionary approach to understanding and treating mental illness. It shifted focus from the neurological to the psychological, proposing a compelling model of the human psyche and, in doing so, irrevocably altered the landscape of both psychiatry and the broader humanities. The intellectual context preceding studies on hysteria was complex, reflecting a scientific milieu that grappled with the perplexing manifestations of hysteria. Prior to Freud and Breuer, hysteria was largely viewed as a neurological disorder, with symptoms often attributed to organic causes, particularly in the nervous system. Jacques at the Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris, notably, had employed hypnosis to explore the symptoms of hysteria, demonstrating their suggestibility. However, his interpretations remained primarily within the framework of neurological dysfunction. The concept of the unconscious mind was, at the time, largely unexplored. The prevailing understanding of mental illness often leaned toward simplistic explanations, neglecting the complex interplay of emotional and psychological factors that Freud would soon expose. The prevalent medical discourse of the late 19th century tended toward the somatic, prioritizing physical symptoms and, frequently, failing to account for the role of psychological trauma. This emphasis resulted in many ineffective treatments and a limited understanding of the underlying causes of neurotic disorders. Studies on hysteria presents a radical paradigm shift by introducing the concept of the unconscious mind as a primary locus of mental conflict. The central thesis posits that hysterical symptoms arise from traumatic experiences that have been repressed from conscious awareness. These repressed memories, charged with intense emotional energy, find expression through physical symptoms, often mimicking organic ailments. The authors posited that bringing these repressed memories into conscious awareness through techniques like hypnosis or, later, free association could alleviate the symptoms. This cathartic method, as Breuer and Freud initially termed it, aimed to release the trapped emotional energy associated with the traumatic memory, offering a therapeutic pathway to recovery. A core concept was the idea of a reaction, the emotional discharge associated with the recall of a repressed memory. The implication was that by re-experiencing and processing the associated emotions, the patient could detach the symptom from its psychological. The book meticulously details several case studies, notably that of Anna O, a patient treated by Breuer. Anna O, suffering from a range of hysterical symptoms including paralysis, visual disturbances, and speech difficulties, provided a vital foundation for the development of psychoanalytic principles. Through Breuer's painstaking work with Anna O relying on hypnosis, the concept of symptom substitution was developed. As Anna O confronted and worked through her repressed memories, some of her symptoms disappeared, only to be replaced by others. This phenomenon, along with the insights gained from other cases, underpinned the crucial idea that symptoms are not random, but are meaningful expressions of underlying psychological conflicts. Anna O also contributed the term talking cure, encapsulating the therapeutic value of verbalizing and processing repressed emotions. The case of Elizabeth von Haar, another central case study, further illuminated the role of unconscious desires and conflicts in shaping hysterical symptoms. Through analyzing her symptoms, often physical, Freud began to connect them to complex emotional issues. These case studies offered a detailed illustration of the theory that these symptoms formed a direct link to the past trauma and could be relieved when these conflicts were brought to conscious awareness. The work also delves into the role of sexuality, although at this stage, the discussions remain less explicit than in Freud's later work. Yet, the influence of sexual trauma or repressed sexual feelings begins to emerge as one of the principal forces in understanding hysteria, paving the way for more fully developed conceptualizations. The immediate impact of studies on hysteria was considerable. Though initially mixed, it attracted both considerable interest and substantial criticism. Within the medical community, the emphasis on psychological factors, especially the role of repressed emotions and trauma, was radical. The exploration of sexuality as a causal factor in mental illness was met with resistance and skepticism, largely due to 19th century social norms and expectations. Initially, studies on hysteria offered a new therapeutic approach, with the potential to treat conditions that had often remained unresolved. Many patients found relief from their symptoms through the cathartic method, which contributed to the growth of psychoanalytic practice. However, the complexities of psychoanalytic treatment including the time commitment and the need for skilled practitioners, limited its immediate appeal. The book's focus on individual case studies, while rich in detail, also posed a challenge to the scientific credibility of its claims, which were not easily replicated or quantified. Over time, the ideas presented in studies on hysteria had a profound, enduring, and transformative influence. Despite initial skepticism from many within the medical establishment, the concept of the unconscious mind gradually gained acceptance, influencing diverse fields. The therapeutic method of talking cure evolved into the more elaborate techniques and theories of psychoanalysis, profoundly affecting various approaches in psychiatry, psychology, and psychotherapy. Later, as psychoanalysis became institutionalized as a discipline, the work became the foundation for later, more detailed explorations. The concept of transference, the unconscious redirection of feelings from one person to another, which emerged during the therapeutic relationship, was a critical discovery. The focus on the individual's history and early childhood experiences, as contributing to their psychological development, became a cornerstone of many therapeutic approaches. The emphasis on exploring dreams and symbols, with the potential of providing insight into unconscious workings, significantly shaped psychological theory and practice. Beyond the therapeutic realm, the influence of the framework of psychoanalysis extended into art, literature, and philosophy, where concepts began to inform analyses of human behavior, motivations, and meanings of cultural artifact. Freud's intellectual journey began with a strong interest in neurology and the neurological basis of mental disorders. His early research focused on this domain. The intellectual influence of Jean-Martin Charcot, whom Freud studied briefly at the Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris, was crucial. Charcot's experiments with hypnosis and his observations on its effects on hysterical patients showed the suggestibility of patients with mental disorders, which, for Freud, suggested the possibility of psychological causation rather than solely neurological. The theoretical framework of the time also included the work of Josef Breuer, who was a pioneer in the use of hypnosis and the study of hysteria. Breuer's treatment of Anna O provided primary empirical evidence for many of Freud's foundational ideas, including the cathartic method, the link between repressed memories and symptoms, and the therapeutic potential of revealing and processing these memories. Another influential influence on Freud came from the philosophers and thinkers who were exploring the nature of consciousness and the unconscious mind. These contributors included individuals like the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, whose concept of the unconscious will, which heavily influenced Freud's early formulations of the dynamics of the psychic apparatus. The influence of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution on Freud's thinking is also significant, as it provided a biological framework for understanding human impulses and how they can be shaped by evolutionary pressures. The development of psychoanalysis was marked by both collaborative efforts and the eventual divergence of ideas. While Freud and Breuer's collaboration in writing studies on hysteria represented a close intellectual partnership, their perspectives diverged over time. Breuer's emphasis, and, eventually, discomfort with the centrality of sexuality in the etiology of hysteria led to a rift. Freud's more radical views, particularly regarding infantile sexuality and the Oedipus complex, was something Breuer could not accept. This conceptual divide drove Breuer to distance himself from psychoanalysis. However, other colleagues like Wilhelm Fliess contributed to the early theoretical foundations of psychoanalysis. Their collaborations, discussions, and shared clinical experiences helped shape Freud's evolving ideas. The initial reception of psychoanalytic ideas within the medical community was often mixed. Freud faced criticism for his theories, which was challenging the dominant understandings of the mind. The emphasis on talking cure and the exploration of the unconscious was considered as too speculative. This challenged his credibility and standing within established scientific and medical institutions. Freud's work was also criticized, especially for his focus on sexuality, as being excessive. The legacy of studies on hysteria extends far beyond its immediate impact. It marks the birth of psychoanalysis as a distinct discipline. Its central tenets, including the unconscious mind, the role of repression, and the significance of early childhood experiences, became central to understanding human behavior. While the specific therapeutic techniques and conceptual frameworks of psychoanalysis have evolved, the core principles of the unconscious, the dynamic interactions of mental forces, remain influential in contemporary psychology, psychotherapy, and mental health practice. Freud's work sparked further studies, including those by his followers, such as Carl Jung, Alfred Adler, and others, who developed their own schools of thought within psychology, expanding the reach of psychoanalytic ideas. The concept of the unconscious became not only a clinical tool, but also a cultural concept, influencing the way society understands the human condition. Many forms of therapy, including psychodynamic psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and others, have adopted core principles from psychoanalysis. They use the concepts of mental processes, unconscious conflicts, and the power of the therapeutic relationship. Furthermore, the influence of studies on hysteria is evident in fields such as art, literature, and film, where psychoanalytic themes and concepts continue to inform creative explorations of human experience.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.